Are you a business owner stuck in fear, doubt, and worry about what the marketplace will look like in the future? Then this show is for you. Strap on your seatbelt and get ready to disrupt and innovate. Here's your host, Lisa Levy.
Today on Disrupt and Innovate, I am thrilled to welcome Michael Toguchi. He is the Chief Strategy Officer at eResources. With over 25 years in nonprofit and education technology, Michael is a master at simplifying the complex, from scholarships and grants to disability accommodations. He builds smarter systems that have supported over 5.6 million applications and awarded over $100 million, empowering mission-driven teams like Stanford and Google to scale their impact without overwhelming their people. So let's get ready to learn how to streamline, strengthen, and truly empower opportunity. Michael, welcome to the conversation.
Thanks, Lisa. Pleasure to be here. Nice to meet everyone.
I am excited to have this conversation with you today. Will you start by explaining what it is that you're doing and why it's so important now?
Yeah, our company, which has been around for quite some time, 25 years, we do digital strategy and transformation. We work with a really diverse clientele, higher ed, nonprofits, associations, mission-driven organizations, and we look for partnerships. We work with some 2 and 3 person shops, and we work with some of the biggest companies and schools in the country. And what we do for them is help leaders identify processes that need to be streamlined, to try and find efficiencies in their workflow, to automate things, to create good cultures where systems and data can be uniform and consistent. And why that's important, it has always been something that was critical in order to find technology and infuse it into all the operations that these customers have. But in this disrupted sort of environment we're in, grants and federal funding are at risk. AI is changing a lot of things. It's more important than ever for groups to be able to work with a lean, efficient team to make sure that data and isn't siloed, to make sure that there's a culture for experimentation, and just to really create the type of environment for groups to succeed and to be constantly evolving and modern.
In our practice, we talk about a formula. People plus process times technology equals efficiency and effectiveness. I think that your team is doing pretty much the same idea, right? If we get businesses, if they are running lean and they have processes that are well tuned and that they use technology to enable themselves, they can do just about anything that they might want to do.
I love that. I love your formula. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. We're Ohio State football fans. One of our old coaches had this phrase, "You win with people." And I love that because I do believe that that's the foundational element for all of this. If you have a bad tool, you can replace it. If you have a bad process, you can fix it. If you have the wrong people, that is fatal. And so I love that you have people first in that. And I also love the idea of not starting with the technology. It's the technology is the amplifier. It's the way that you implement. It's the mechanism, digital transformation and strategy. So I think that's a great formula you've got.
And it's fun to play with, right? And it just people go, I get it. With the work that you're doing with your clients, describe for us a little bit about how you approach and how you work with them so that they can start to have some real gains.
Yeah, well, I mean, we work with the stakeholders and leadership to make sure, they've got champions, that they have buy-in for the kind of work. A lot of their staff, they're overworked and, kind of burdened with things as it is. And so they, from a process standpoint, they need to be communicated what's the why? How does this tie to our mission? How is this going to be helpful for me? It isn't just new, some more additional tasks that you're tacking onto my responsibilities, explaining to them, hey, what we really want to do, the ROI here is your time. It is, you may spend hours of your day in spreadsheets, copying things back and forth, manually answering emails from, clients or students or things like that. How are we going to create some efficiencies? How do we automate that? And it's not always just about a tool. It may just be about creating a better workflow. And then start looking across, we often find whether it's a member association that has departments or university that has different groups, they're siloed. they all have their own tool and their own process, and therefore they all have different kinds of data that's not validated and malformed. And so how do we create an environment where they start to integrate, break down some of those barriers? And so we're looking at those kinds of things at a top level to start creating the kind of strategy. And once we get there, once you've got a roadmap, you have to put in place things that allow people to have small wins, right? Like you can't build Rome in a day. You can't just say like, oh, well, hey, we're going to use HubSpot and that's going to solve all of our, it's not certain that's not the way that these things work. So you have to create something that allows people to build up confidence in your process. So they start to see, hey, I work at a nonprofit or I work at a university. Now I'm freeing up time to spend more time with students or more time, working on the mission that I signed up for. And so we're trying to make sure that it's communicated. There's communication, transparency, and accountability in this process to really encourage the buy-in from all the team members.
I love that in what you've described so far, you've talked about tying back to the mission. You've said it 3 times. And that is such an important part, especially when we're talking in a nonprofit space where it is all about the mission. And so the idea that it is about transparency, accountability, communication, and getting teams to get rid of the redundant work or the competing work so that people are getting their time back to focus on the mission. That must have a huge impact for your clients.
Yeah, we work with a disability center at a major university that had a lot of old legacy systems that were built by, some were tools that they purchased, some were built by old IT, members that weren't even around anymore. And, the folks there were extremely overworked. University budgets are always challenged. They weren't, even when they could prove that they were tapped on resources, there was no budget to hire more folks. And so the team may look at like, oh my gosh, we're bringing in another platform, another consulting process, another workflow. How am I going to manage this with all of my work? But this is, that's the use case where we were able to show, hey, we're finding new ways to use technology in order to communicate faster. There were folks that were spending all their time answering frustrated emails from faculty. There were students that weren't getting accommodations for classes that they needed. And folks were just underwater trying to deal with the bureaucratic component of it. And so we were able to help them create a strategy and a platform that allowed them to develop a way more efficient path to tackle a lot of these things. And what that allowed these folks to do is sort of case specialists. They got more time with the students that, were struggling with disabilities and needed their help. And it became something where rather than being frustrated and feeling like the day was just a bunch of manual tasks and answering angry things, they were really doing the work that was meaningful to them. And that's something that we've seen across. Again, it doesn't have to be a university. At nonprofits that have scholarship grants, scholarships or foundations that give out grants. It's a lot of times you're talking about, well, I have to score all these reviews and I have to track down references and I have to then import this into whatever program that we're using. And we help folks with those kinds of projects so that, they're like, oh, I was at a foundation with a mission I really supported, or I was at a place where now I'm actually out there helping, kids from low income families utilize their scholarships and making that. And so we love the ability to free up that time for the impactful work that does tie to the mission. And I think, again, we think of it less as like the technology is going to be the solvency mechanism. It's really the workflow, the automation, the process, and that culture. And the technology becomes the mechanism to do it.
Absolutely, right? If a technology enables a bad process, we can get to super fast bad outputs really, really, really quickly.
No, you're definitely right on there.
Yeah. And so with this, when you're working inside of universities and some of these types of environments that are probably older, really mature, very much, this is the way we've always done it. And with employees who have been there for a long, long, long time. So, right, we have a lot of status quo mindset. How do you get them interested in actually disrupting that status quo to get them back to their mission?
Yeah, I mean, that's where it really is incumbent upon, us as a partner, and it's, we don't like to do, we will periodically do projects that kind of start and finish, and then everyone goes on with their day and lives. But a lot of our relationships involve being somebody that will be there, like, past the implementation, like, because things change. It's compliance, regulation, budgets, student needs. What something that we helped create a couple of years ago looks radically different now with with AI, or just the way the environment is in higher education. And so, first you make it clear to people that you're there for the long haul, to understand their challenges, and to work with them to truly accomplish the goals that we've set out. It gets also to working with leadership and being like, that those notes that we had about transparency, accountability, communication, culture. Like, are you setting, if you're asking people to change, are you setting aside time for them to experiment and potentially fail at things? And that's not a bad thing, right? It needs to be, if you want them to use new technologies, understand that, like, there has to be space for things not to work, and that we adapt from that. That doesn't make the effort a failure. It just means that we've tried something, and we need to pivot or shift to something else. And so there's a building up of trust, and then making sure that the leadership team is communicating and creating the culture that enables the success, so that they can tie it back to, these are going to be the benefits for me. And I think part of that is just the principle of, like, story brand, where, like, everybody wants to be the hero in their own story. And so the leader needs to say, for the staff, I need to make them the hero in this story. And for the staff, then they need to make the students or the faculty the heroes. Like, you need to give everybody a sense of their purpose in this journey that they're going.
Absolutely. The journey is what's the most important part in all of this, because the end user, the end client, the student in many of
Yeah,
these
in that case,
examples,
yeah.
right? They are the hero, right? It is actually their journey that everybody is on, trying to get them through the academic process to go out into the world and be the best version of themselves that they could possibly be. What are some of the roadblocks that your clients face that you help them navigate through?
Some of the usual ones, the budget, the timeline. The one we encounter the most is just the idea of the siloed information, siloed data, siloed processes, and people that are, again, you could pick any kind of organization or structure. There's going to be departments or little teams of things that want to do things their own way. They think, and oftentimes their KPI or their goal could be a little bit different. And that's a little bit of a leadership issue, where they have to say, like, we have to connect all of these things together. If this development or fundraising person gets a grant, but the grant has, like, some very specific ties that are different than the research teams, there's a disconnect there. And so we have to make sure that everybody is on the same page about the priorities, the alignment on why we're doing this, how we're going to gauge it. The transformation is never going to be a straight line. It's going to be bumpy. You need to be able to adapt to it. And so, again, comes back to a little bit of building up that trust, a little bit of straightforward communication, and making sure that you break down those silos, so that, because if you don't have true integration amongst all the parts of your team, the effort is not going to be successful.
Absolutely true. All right. Alignment is critical. I talk a lot about the tone is set at the top, but if that tone is not resonated at the bottom, you're never going to get anywhere, right? That message has to go all the way through all levels and bubble back up the same way. Let's talk a little bit about this from a slightly different perspective, Michael. You're a business builder in your own right? eResources is a growing organization. What is an obstacle or a setback that you've had with your company that once you overcame it has been, a huge win for you?
Well, I mean, our business, we're a vertically integrated company that handles a lot of different projects. We have a broad skill set. We have an IT division that does MSP, help desk, and security. We have our Orchestrate application platform that we use for all sorts of workflow, including the disability centers. And we have marketing, branding, and strategy. And so that's a lot. And we come up against the same issue that I mentioned. Is why we have a lot of expertise in it, is that, a creative designer on a website that wants to do logos is different than a person that wants to create a workflow for a scholarship platform, which is very different from a person that wants to close tickets for help desk. And so having strong leadership that communicates the goal of how to have those teams connected, to understand you have your specialties, you have the projects and clients that you work with, but that we're an interconnected team. That's what makes us stronger in a way that it really opened and unlocked the ability for us to say, well, when you're working with us, if you're also encountering this other problem, we have folks on our team that you haven't even met that that have years of experience in this, and we're able to bring in those resources and help. And so really creating that idea of the culture and team that hops across different, so it sort of has cross pollination within the divisions and teams. That's been exceptional for us. It also, I mean, one of the things I talked a little bit about, just the idea of small wins, giving champions within the teams and giving them that room to experiment and saying like, let's just pick a workflow to automate or to shift, and doing those things, taking some baby steps first. And that allowed everyone to really start getting the buy-in and seeing the fruits of their labor. And that sort of opens the door, from a crack to a larger opening for more radical transformation.
Absolutely. I love to take the mindset that everything that we do in business every day, all day long, everything is an experiment. And the faster we get to the failure is the faster that we get to the actual learning moment of how to do things better. Wants to fail. Why do we keep talking about fail fast? Well, I would rather learn something fast. And the best way that we learn is through failure. So yes, experimentation and having that be part of your career and understanding that more things may not go the way that you thought they would, but then the ones that do are so much more impactful. That spirit of experimentation is something that is so huge for a business, an entity, an organization that wants to evolve and grow and be better tomorrow than they are today. It's a foundational practice. I love that you play with that and share that in your environment with your clients.
Yeah, that there's a little bit of adapt or die going around right now, at least in my opinion. One of the things you mentioned about you'd rather fail fast. I think one of the biggest challenges is when it's not clear, when it's not a home run success and it's not a clear failure. What if it's just good enough? And I think that that's a challenge that a lot of leaders have right now, where they're like, well, hey, my pipeline looks okay, my P&L is okay, maybe this process isn't perfect, but it's good enough for what we're doing. That's a scary place to be in, given the level of external digital disruption that is happening. And I think that that's where people need to have a very clear mind to rip the Band-Aid off and say, like, doing things just the way we're doing and being just good enough is not going to cut it. And so this is the opportunity to reframe issues, to rebuild cultures, to find out if there are folks that have, maybe there are some folks that are on your team who've been there for a very long time, and it's hard to, if they're change averse, like, you have to give them that, give them the speech and explain why it's so critical that we start updating processes and doing things in a different way. And so, I mean, that'd be my main advice, is just that, like, this is not an environment for the faint of heart. And even if you're doing just okay, that doesn't mean that you should sort of rest on it. AI and other elements, it's not just AI, I mean the economic environment as well. Like, it's just not a place where you want to be, kind of sitting around, kind of hoping things continue to get good or ride out the wave of it.
Good enough is a scary place, right? Because that's sort of that's almost like standing in quicksand. You will sink very slowly because good enough revenue today is not gonna pay the bills a year from now.
No, absolutely, because you can't. It's the environment is not as projectable as it once was. Like, it's very difficult to know. And again, that cuts across all industries. Like, state budgets are shrinking. Federal funding is at risk, and so you just don't. And in a corporate environment, like, how people are spending money is different than it has been in the past. So I don't think that people can count on it. They need to be constantly analyzing and optimizing their processes to make sure that, like, they may have just finished some big thing and gotten some tool in place and feel like they're okay, but that doesn't, you need to be forward looking and, kind of assessing the terrain.
Yeah, one of the things I came across a statistic recently that about 20 years ago, Total Quality Management would have said that it is appropriate to retool and revise and look at processes on an annual basis. That was sort of the rate of change, that if you did that, you were going to stay on pace with the market trends and things that are happening. The statistic today says that in most operations, you should be looking at processes monthly. Not that you're looking at all processes monthly, right? Don't let your head explode on that mindset, but that the rate of change is that fast right now. And that whether it's with technology and AI type of impact, or just, people thinking and doing things, that change is very constant. And to think that good enough is going to be good enough is not, it's not going to carry you forward.
Yeah.
Michael, if you have piqued the interest and curiosity from members of the audience, how do they learn? How do they learn more?
You can find me on LinkedIn. There's not that many Michael Toguchis hanging around that space. You could also go to our Orchestrate platform is at onlineapplications.net. Our company eResources has a website, eResources.com. But yeah, if you track me down, I'd love to hear about your challenges. And from our side, like I said, we love to be partners for folks, but we're happy to point you in the direction to make sure you get the help. We love to help people get back to their impactful work. And if that's us or if it's someone else, we'd love to help.
And that's fantastic, Michael. Thank you for our conversation today, where we've really talked through the impact of tuning processes so that people can really focus on their core mission, because that is, regardless of the industry, the why we're in the business is what matters most. And when looking at things, I love you used a phrase that the ROI we talk about in many of these instances is your time, the employee's time being able to focus back on the things that matter. In the work within eResources, we talk about getting to a roadmap of where the business should be, the organization should be, the small wins, building confidence, increasing transparency, accountability, communication, building good culture. Inside of all this, talked about the power of experimentation and story brand, right? Getting to the understanding who the real hero is in this story and making sure that the work that you're doing aligns with this. And in the times like we're in, the mindset of adapt or die, it's important that we realize that good enough today will not carry us into the future. I appreciate the conversation and the perspectives. Audience members, you know my rules. Don't get left behind. Join me next time.
That's it for today's episode of Disrupt and Innovate. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show.